Good morning, thanks for calling. Your call may be recorded for training purposes. If you have a query regarding diesel heaters, press 1. If you have called about van life hacks, press 2. If you are here for the interior stripping video, please stay on the line. If you have any other queries, hit subscribe and we'll get back to you. Probably. So here we go. The first thing we need to do is disconnect the battery. Because we're removing the driver's seat and there is an airbag sensor attached to it, it's always a good idea to disconnect the battery first and wait at least 10 minutes before removing the seat. That way there's no chance of accidentally setting the airbag off. It's not very likely to happen, but there isn't any point in taking the risk as it could be painful or expensive. The 10-minute wait allows for the capacitor to discharge any stored energy it might have in it. It's also a good idea to disconnect the battery so there's no chance of you turning on the ignition without the driver's seat installed, as then you would get an airbag warning light that would need a special tool that you probably don't have to turn it off. The van has been sawn for months and the battery needs a good charge, so we're going to remove it fully and put it on a slow charge for a couple of days to let it repair itself. So as always, you're going to want to disconnect the negative battery cable first. If you're just disconnecting the battery instead of removing it like us, this is all you'll need to do. And once the negative cable is disconnected, you can carry on with the rest of whatever you're doing. To loosen it, all you'll need is a 10mm spanner or socket. It'll only need a few turns, you just need to loosen it off enough to slide it off. If you're removing the battery completely, you'll need to do the same to the positive cable too. It looks complicated, but it's not, it's just one nut like the negative. It would be very hard to get it off with a spanner unless you have a ratcheting spanner, so it's best to use a 10mm socket. Again, just a few turns and slide it off. And then the last thing you'll need to do to remove the battery is undo this bolt and loosen or remove the plate. For this you'll need a T40 Torx bit. It might be quite tight to start, but after a couple of turns it should be very easy to do the rest with your fingers. Next we're going to remove the passenger seat, because this will give us much more space to move about in. It's very easy to do and there are just 6 bolts to remove, 1 in each corner and 2 in the middle at the back. We thought they'd be very tight and have Loctites in the threads, so for the first one we used a breaker bar. We worked out that wasn't working, so we moved on to a ratchet with a 12mm socket. Top tip: make sure you label up the bolts or put them back where they came out of so you don't lose any or mix them up, especially if the interior will be out for quite a long time. Once they are out, all you need to do is unbolt the seatbelt. For this you'll need the T40 Torx bit again. It might be easier to move the seat back into the back of the van like we did to give you easier access to it. We put the seatbelt bolt back into the hole so we don't lose it, and we have it to hand when we're ready to connect it back up. The seat, by the way, is a lot lighter than it looks, and it can be lifted by one average strength person by themselves. As it hasn't quite been 10 minutes yet since we disconnected the battery, we're not going to do the driver's seat next. We'll come back to it in a bit. So we'll start on all the bits above the dashboard. First off, the sun visor. For this what you'll need is a T30 Torx bit. Undo the bolt and pull it off. Next we'll remove the shelf. For this you'll need a trim removal tool or a small flat-headed screwdriver or something similar. The ones we're using are crap, so we don't recommend these ones at all. A screwdriver would have done a good job. Just get the edge under the little plastic cover somewhere and gently unclip it so you don't damage anything or scratch the shelf. Once you have the cover off, you just need to undo one more T30 Torx bolt. Once the bolt is out, all you need to do is drop the back of the shelf down a bit, unhook it from the pillar side of the van, then twist the centre side until the hook slides out of the hole. Then do the same for the driver's side. It's a good idea to put the Torx bolts in the hole in the shelf and put the cover back on so you know where it is when you need it. The same with the sun visor. The screw should just screw back in a bit and be held there securely. Next we're going to remove these random black hooks that were holding the shelves up. For this you're going to need a T50 Torx bit. It feels like it might twist and break a bit, but then it just clicks loose and is very easy to undo with your fingers. Same for the driver's side. Next we'll move on to these horrible headliner clips. Again, the best thing to use would be a trim removal tool, but as we said earlier, these ones are crap, and as you can see we broke one trying to get a clip out. We bought cheap and now we have to buy again. Lesson learned. If you want a decent set, there is a link in the description to some decent solid ones. If you don't want to be buying any special tools, you could always just use a crowbar instead, like we ended up doing. Next we move on to this bit at the top with the interior lights and hazard light warning button, etc. This is very easy to do. The first thing you need to do is grab yourself 2 flat-headed screwdrivers and slip them into the little gaps for them. There are 2 clips at the back, you need to just push them in together to get it to drop down. Then pull the back bit down first and it should slide out. There is a little hook at the front, so you need to do it in this motion. Next, unclip the wires from the back. There are 3 on this one and each clip has a little lever you need to press down to release it. If you have a spare hand, it's easier to do this with a flat-headed screwdriver. If not, you can still do it quite easily with your fingers. Next you will need to undo these 2 T30 Torx screws. Once they are undone again, pull the back down first, as there is a little hook on the front part and needs to be removed using this motion. Don't forget to label the screws so you know where they are later when you put it back together. You'll find a couple more headliner clips have now revealed themselves, so now we need to remove them. So grab your special clip removal tool. Try and be gentle with these ones as they're very near an edge, and if you go too heavy-handed you could damage the headliner. Next we move on to this bit that covers your wing mirror bolts. This is very easy. All you need to do is pull it off. It couldn't be any simpler. Now we move on to the seat belt and B pillar. First, move the height adjuster as high as it'll go. We're going to need to push it from the bottom to remove it in a minute, and if it isn't as high as it'll go already, it'll just slide up and we try making things really awkward. Next, find your 2 flat-headed screwdrivers again. Behind the bit you just pushed up there are 2 small black levers, one on each side. I'll show you them once it's been removed. You need to push them both down at the same time, and when you are holding them down you need to push the height adjuster up from the bottom like this and it should just pop off. And now it's off, here's what the levers look like. You need to push them in and then push up and pop. Next, grab your T40 Torx bit and undo the bolt you've just revealed. Now you're ready to remove the plastic cover from the B pillar. Again, this is pretty easy and it's just held on with clips. You have to pull quite hard but it will come off. Then the last thing you'll need to do is remove the actual seatbelt reel itself. And again, this is very easy. All you will need is a T40 Torx bit. Once you crack it loose, it's only about 1 turn until it's loose enough to finish off with your fingers. Once you've removed one B pillar cover, we can now remove the headliner. The last thing holding the headliner in place are the 2 handles. These are a bit tricky to remove. They don't have any screws in them at all, they're just held in by clips that are really awkward to get to. First you need to pop the little plastic covers out with a trim removal tool or a flat-headed screwdriver. Next you need to push something flat up in between the headliner and the plastic to unclip the clips. First go up from the bottom. This one is easy as you can use a screwdriver, so push it up and it pops out. Next you have to unclip the one from the top too. This is a bit more awkward as there's no room to fit a screwdriver, but you just need something shorter or something that has a bend in it. Then you can slide it in between the plastic and the headliner, push it down and unclip it. Then do the same again times 3. Once they are both off, the headliner should lift straight out. Next we'll move on to the door card. This is one of the most attached things in the van, so it seems. There are no fewer than 10 screws to remove. Most of them are covered up in one way or another, so the first thing we need to do is uncover them. For this, all we used was a flat-headed screwdriver. Some are covered by little plastic caps, so we'll pop all of those off first. The first one is in the top corner next to the B pillar. The next one is where the door handle is. Next one is on the storage area, and the final one is in the drinks bottle indent right here. Once those are all removed, we should be able to remove all the T20 screws. So that's all of the T20 screws out. That just leaves 4 T30 screws. The first is the one under the door handle, the second is the one in the drinks bottle indent, and the third and fourth are under here. To get to these, we need to remove the top of the handle. For this, you'll need a flat-headed screwdriver or a trim removal tool. You need to start at the bottom and pry it apart. This is quite delicate, so be gentle and continue all the way around until all the clips are unclipped. You can now get to the final boss, the 2 T30 screws, and remove them. The last thing you need to do before removing the door cards is to deal with the switch for the electric windows and the cable that plugs into it. Again, this is very easy, and all you need is a flat-headed screwdriver. It should just pop out. Then undo the cable by pressing the lever and pulling the connectors apart. Once that's done, you're ready to remove the door card, but as you can see, it's still very firmly held in place with clips. For this, we start in the bottom corner and pop that out first. You will need to pull quite hard, so hard that it feels like you're going to break it, to be honest, but that is normal. Once you get the first corner off, it's much easier to pull the rest off, and it should come off quite easily. Now it's been a lot longer than 10 minutes, so we're safe to remove the driver's seat next. This is easier than the passenger seat, as there are only 4 bolts on this one, but before we can do that, we need to disconnect the cable that we had to wait 10 minutes for. This can be found at the front of the seat, attached to the base with a clip. To undo the clip attaching it to the seat, there is a lever underneath it. Just slip a screwdriver under it and ease up on the lever and slide the electric connector off like this. Then to disconnect the cables from each other, it's just another little lever and pull them apart. Next, we just pop this little clip out with our special trim removal tool. Reach under the seat and unhook the wiring conduit from the inside of the seat base like this. And then finally, undo the 4 seat bolts. Label the bolts so you know where to find them. Then we can move the seat again to make it easier to get to the seatbelt bolt. Grab a T40 Torx bit, undo the bolt, remove the seatbelt, put the bolt back in so you don't lose it, and that's that. The seat again is light enough for one person. It's awkward, but it's light. The next few parts are a bit repetitive as they are exactly the same as the other side of the van. Door card. Unclip the clips from the door, undo the screws, pry off the cover on the handle, undo more screws, remove window switch and cable, get a grip and rip. B pillar. Push up the height adjuster, slip in the flatheads, push down the levers, push the height adjuster up, catch it mid-air like a pro, undo bolt, pull off plastic cover. Now on this side of the van there is a cable connected to the seatbelt that we did not have on the passenger side. So we need to unclip the yellow bit, then pull it off. We accidentally pulled it all the way off being heavy-handed. It just needs to pull up. It's okay if it does come all the way out though, as it went back in fine and still works correctly, thankfully. Next you will need to remove the step from the driver's wheel well. This one has cement dried in the heads of the bolts. We had to break it and order a new one instead. So we have no footage, but again it's just a few screws and you can manage that. There are a few around the rim and 2 at the bottom in the actual step under some plastic covers. After that, we're going to remove the plastic kick panel from the driver's side. We're going to leave the passenger side one as it is, as it has the bonnet release attached to it and we need access to the engine compartment. But to remove the driver's one, it's just clips again. You can slide something behind it and unclip them one by one like this, or just rip it off. If you rip it off, all that tends to happen is the panel clips stay attached to the van rather than the panel. You can just pull them off of the van and then put them back in the panel, no problem at all. Next, we're going to remove the rubber flooring. Now everything else is out already, this bit is very easy. There are just 3 plastic screws and 1 bolt. First, undo and remove the screw from the passenger side. Next, there are 2 you need to remove on the driver's side. Then finally, we have to undo this bolt on the steering column so we can slide the flooring over it. For this, you will need a 12mm spanner or socket. Undo the bolt and remove it. Then you can just push this bit to the side and get the flooring out. You can actually push the bottom bit of metal down, take the flooring out and then lift it back up without causing any problems, but we had just enough room to get it over the top, so I didn't bother. Once it's out, connect it all back together with the bolt so it's all working correctly again. You should now be able to work your way around and pull the flooring all the way out. And that's it, that's your interior removed. We are Van Life UK Complete Survivor's Guide. If you liked, please subscribe.